Well, welcome to all of you who have signed up and visited us today. We're glad to share this information with you and the work of Joanna Macy with you. So greetings and welcome to Creation in Crisis. We are a webinar sponsored by the Creation Spirituality Communities that meets on the first Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock Eastern. We feature speakers who are exploring the nexus between spirituality, cosmology, and activism, which align with the three vocations of creation spirituality: mysticism, creativity, and transformation. This series is offered to the broader creation spirituality community to aid us in responding to our environmental crisis from a spiritual approach. As people who hold the earth and all life sacred, our speakers address this crisis in creation through their experiences with environmental law, earth activism, research, spiritual practice, science, cosmology, community organizing, and the arts. Your hosts and leadership team for this session are me, Gail Sophia Ransom. I'm from the Boston Basin region in lands ceded from the Massachusetts tribe, and Penny Andrews from the Great Lakes bioregion, ceded from the Ho-Chunk people. And our tech support is provided by Bob Eisenberger from Toronto on land ceded from the Mississaugas of the Credit. We're going to start today with a song that's a very favorite one of Joanna Macy, actually. It's done by two women called Appalachia. And the name of the song is "We Shall Be Known by the Company We Keep."
It's actually a different version, I'm sorry, but it's the right song.
Oh, okay.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in
Oh, the beloved community. Before we started, also, Bob, wondered if you wanted to give us any electronic technology suggestions.
Sure. I think the only thing we need to note today is there may be a couple of times when you're asked whether you might have any questions or comments. And in that case, what the practice we'd like to adopt is, if you look at your Zoom toolbar, usually at the bottom of your screen, but if you're on a different kind of device, it might be someplace else, you'll see a button called Reactions. And you click on that, the text bar at the bottom of that little pop-up says Raise Hand, and that'll put your hand up in the corner of the screen and put you up in the corner of the screen so that we can call on you. I think that's all we need to know today, Gail.
Yeah, good. Good, glad you're here. First up is Penny Andrews, who has spent the most time with Joanna Macy, of the three of us.
Well, it's wonderful to be gathered here. And I don't know how many of you have been with us over the last couple of months where Michael Dowd had us and our feet to the fire of the reality of the time through the lens that he sees. And he calls us all to that reality. And it's been a bumpy ride, let's call it that. And it is also one way to respond. His post-doom philosophy and suggestions are good advice in any time. Be a blessing, show up, be love. And so that's one thing that I've taken with me from his talks. And I'd like to share just a little bit about Joanna's role in my life. And prior to that, Joanna's role with the University of Creation Spirituality. She came into classes when I was back there in 2000 something. She and Brian Swim and Matthew Fox helped each other with their ideas and encouraged each other. And she is clearly one who is of the creation spirituality lineage, though she brings her own lineage through Buddhism, systems theory, and eco psychology. 10 years ago, I decided the only way I was going to experience Joanna Macy was to bring her to Madison, and a lovely group of folks showed up to help make that happen. And for 5 days, when she was 82 years old, we gathered and gleaned her wisdom. Years passed, and as the headlines got a little more severe, some of us in that locally based community called each other together, and we have been in a practice group, a Work That Reconnects practice group for 3 or 4 years now. And we've changed form, and we lean on each other in this time for our deepest truths about this time. And I can't say enough about the depth of this community and the breadth of this community, even as we have shrunk and grown due to COVID, due to in-person and not. And we continue to meet Sunday mornings for a meditation time together. And we hold each other dearly. And if I come to a point where my despair is great, I bring it to that group. And by the depth of community, I leave differently than I arrived. So that's the background for me with this work. And I think it's a good time now to turn to one of the formative stories of Joanna's, which is the Shambhala warrior. And it was given to her, and I'm sure she'll explain all this, but it became very central to her work that she went on to do in the anti-nuclear movement, which was just as pressing in its time as what we are now facing, which is obviously anti-nuclear times many other things that are on our looming plate. But that said, Bob, would you bring forth the Shambhala warrior story told by Joanna?
I'd like to tell you a prophecy from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. It's called The Coming of the Kingdom of Shambhala, and it is 12 centuries old. This is a particular version of the prophecy embedded in the Kala Chakra Tantra. And it was given to me by my dear friend, Dharma brother, Dugu Chogyal Rinpoche of the community of Tashijong in India. When I heard it, I realized that the term Shambhala warrior is a metaphor for what in Buddhism is understood to be the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is the hero in the Buddhist tradition. And because the core teaching of the Lord Buddha is the radical inter-existence of all things, if one person has the capacity to be a bodhisattva, then others do too. So let me tell you this prophecy. I'm going to aim it at the bodhisattva inside you. Listen to it as if it were about you, as if you realized it were about you. And I'm giving it to you pretty much in the language I received it from Dugu Chogyal Rinpoche. There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. At that time, great powers have arisen, barbarian powers. And although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common. And among the things these powers, these barbarian powers, have in common are weapons of unfathomable devastation and death, and technologies that lay waste the world. And it is just at this point in our history when the future of all beings seems to hang by the frailest of threads that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. Now you can't go there because it is not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. And actually, you can't tell a Shambhala warrior by looking at her or him, because they wear no uniforms, no insignia, they wield no banners, they have no barricades upon which to climb to threaten the enemy or behind which they can rest and regroup. They don't even have any home turf. The Shambhala warriors have only the terrain of the barbarian powers to move across, to act upon. Now the time is coming, Dugu Gyal Rinpoche said to me, when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors. Moral courage and physical courage. And that's because they are going to go right into the heart of the barbarian powers to dismantle their weapons. They're going to go into the pits and citadels where the weapons are made and deployed. They're going to go into the corridors of power where the decisions are made to dismantle the weapons in every sense of the word. Now mark this, said Chujia Rinpoche to me. The Shambhala warriors know that these weapons can be dismantled because they are manomaya. That means mind-made. Made by the human mind, they can be unmade by the human mind. Because the dangers that face us are not brought upon us by some satanic deity or some evil extraterrestrial force or some unchangeable preordained fate. They arise out of our relationships and habits, out of our priorities. They are made by the human mind. They can be unmade by the human mind. So, he said, now is the time the Shambhala warriors go into training. How do they train? I asked. They train in the use of two implements, he said. Actually used the word weapons. What are they? I asked. And he held up his hands the way the dancers hold the ritual objects in the great Lama dances of his people. And he said, one is compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena. And you need both, he said. You need the compassion because that provides the fuel to move you out where you need to be, to do what you need to do. It means not being afraid of the suffering of your world. And when you're not afraid to be with that pain, then nothing can stop you. You can be and do what you're meant to. But by itself, he said, that implement is very hot. It can burn you out. So you need the other. That other tool, the insight into the radical interconnectivity at the heart of existence. The web of life, our deep ecology. When you have that, you know, he said, when you understand that, then you know that this is not a battle between good guys and bad guys. You know that the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. And you know that we are so interwoven in the web of life that even the smallest act with clear intention has repercussions through the whole web beyond your capacity to see. But that's kind of cool, he said. It's maybe even a little abstract, so you need the heat of the compassion. That's the prophecy. And if you've seen Tibetan monks doing chanting with the hand gestures, the mudras moving, likely as not, they are dancing the interplay between compassion and wisdom, which is there for each one of us to embody now in our own way.
Right. So we breathe in compassion, our love for the world, and then we breathe in insight and wisdom. So today is a bit on Joanna's wisdom and what she offers us during this period of what some have called VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that was a term coined by academics back in 1980 as they were reading the signs that lie ahead. I believe Joanna to be an elder and a teacher for the via negativa of the creation spirituality of our times. She's also a systems theorist. So she gives us a platform. She calls it a meta narrative. And I'm going to speak a little bit about this. And for those of you that know Joanna's work, this is going to be a repeat. But every time I hear it retold, something new clicks in. First, she talks about the three things that are going on simultaneously right now. The first is the great unraveling. And each of us in our own worlds right now, whether you're on one continent or another, have your own story of the great unraveling. And for some of us, it's very personal in this moment, or was 2 years ago. For others of us, it hasn't happened yet, but it may happen anytime. That's the VUCA, the period of VUCA. Right now, we're looking at Pakistan, and 1 in 7 people are displaced because of the flooding there. It's in utter chaos. Rivers are dry. Famous rivers are gone at the moment. So this is the one that confronts us and takes our breath away. And each of us in our own way, in our own worlds, has to create a response that allows for us to be resilient to the headlines or to what's in our back door or yard. The other one going on right now is what's called business as usual. And that gets harder and harder to accept, but many of our governments still are so slow to respond. And it is things like forgiving student debt, which is wonderful, but it's a task of business as usual, as if big change isn't looming in our futures or isn't here now. But it's going on, and it is another system that is very much in play today. And for some of us, it can be very frustrating. And for others of us who are the students whose debts have just been forgiven are rejoicing, as they should. But it feels more and more like a disconnect when business as usual is celebrated in the face of what is much larger. And then the last one, the last system she talks about that is in play is called the Great Turning. And we have things like regenerative agriculture being celebrated, and we have indigenous wisdom coming through the sciences now, where science is no longer looking at things in silos, but is looking at the relational fields. And the science is telling us it's all connected. You cannot do something to one aspect and not expect another aspect to be effective. And so, just to repeat, the three systems she sees in play today are the great unraveling, business as usual, and the great turning. Now, underneath the great turning is something she calls the three pillars. And Bob, if you could put that slide up.
Yep. Oh, hang on. I don't know where it went. There we go.
There it is. So she has different words for this, and I'll use a couple of them. But within the great turning are holding actions, structural changes, and shifts in consciousness. Holding actions is also called acting to slow destruction. And we can all think of many, many organizations at work, possibly a million groups that are working to hold things so that they do not collapse today or this year or 5 years from now. Absolutely necessary, absolutely essential. The second one is generating life supporting systems or structural changes. And that would be something like solar or wind or using hemp versus things that require fossil fuels. And again, I'm sure you can think of a number of these. And then the shifts in consciousness is changing our behavior in profound ways for the good of all, to finally cease a me point of view and consider the we. Absolutely essential for the times ahead. Life is the primary reality. Understanding that we are in a world that is relational. What we do to our persons, what we do to the air, what we do to the water, the soil, all essential for life. And we understand that more than at any other time in history. So even as the wisdom has come to us, so have challenges that are as big as this wisdom. Thanks, Bob. So her call to us, and again, this is a woman who's 90, she'll be 93 this year, if she isn't, and who has lived most of her adult life responding to what she thought initially was profound nuclear threat to the world. She's been living in the face of that and living with and working with and training people who have been understanding.
Where you're going, I'll be back.
Did you work today?
Yeah, I just got off a little early.
You want to mute, Bob?
I'm gonna work tomorrow.
I'm looking for them.
Oh, good.
So,
I'll get my meal when I come back. I'll get my meal when I come back.
Okay.
So if someone is not muted, please mute yourself.
so her reality, in fact, where she probably did her hardest work because she felt so profoundly unprepared was she was called to Chernobyl. And the people there were crushed. And she accepted the invitation, but she thought, you know, I don't know what to do. And as a result of just being present, of hearing people's grief, their anger, their fear, and then going to the forest with this, which is where the elm dance came from. In a language barriered situation, there was a breakthrough in this community because she came and was willing to be a witness and to listen. So that's her framework, and it was trial by fire. But over the years, she came up with what she calls active hope. And we're talking today about the book, the revision that she just published. And there's a slight title change: How to Face the Mess We're In with Unexpected Resilience and Creative Power. So I'm going to read a few words of hers and then kind of sum up where she is with active hope today in our world. Active hope is not wishful thinking. It is not wanting and waiting to be rescued by the Lone Ranger or some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life, on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way and are here to play our part. With active hope, we realize that there are adventures in store, strengths to discover, and comrades to link arms with. Active hope is a readiness to engage, a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others, a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love. It's a readiness to discover the size and strength of our hearts, our quickness of mind, our steadiness of purpose, our own authority, our love for life, the liveliness of our curiosity, the unsuspected deep well of patience and diligence, the keenness of our senses and our capacity to lead, and none of this can be discovered in an armchair or without risk. So to dig a little deeper right now in where she is pointing us, she talks about the greatest danger of this time is the deadening of our response. Matt might call it acedia. And as Michael's talk reflected for many of us, when we face the mess, we can feel overwhelmed. So we begin by acknowledging that our times confront us with realities that are painful to face, difficult to take in, and confusing to live with. When we start from this place of truth, when we are most exasperated, we can surprise ourselves. It is there we discover strengths we never knew we had, or as Dwayne Elgin might suggest, we begin to experience degrees of aliveness we'd never known to be possible. we free up that energy that has been busy trying to suppress difficult realities. It is a time to reach out to new allies and discard thoughts and behaviors that have led us astray. In a process known as adversity activated development, the very fact that we face the mess can help us discover a more enlivening sense of what our lives are about and what we're here to do and what we're really capable of. She defines active hope as when we are jolted or even decimated by news of some kind. The response we make and the degree to which we believe they count, that our responses count, have everything to do about what we think about hope. The word hope has two meanings. The first is hopefulness and is tied to an expectation. And this type of hope can get blocked off if we perceive our chances are limited. The second meaning of hope is about desire and is tied to our visioning, our imagining of a flourishing earth. It is knowing what we hope for and what we'd like to have happen. Passive hope is about waiting for external agencies to bring about what we desire. Active hope is about becoming active participants in the process of moving forward and, where we can, realizing our vision. And this part's essential. It's absolutely essential. Active hope is a practice, like Tai Chi or gardening. It is something we do rather than something we have. It's a process we apply to any situation, and it involves 3 steps. Start from where we are, take a clear view of reality, acknowledging what we see and what we feel. Number 2, identify what we hope for in terms of the direction we'd like things to move in or the values we'd like to see expressed. And 3, take the steps to move ourselves or our situation in that direction. Since active hope doesn't require optimism, we can apply it even where we feel hopeless. And another essential piece of Joanna's work is the guiding impetus is intention. We choose what we aim to bring about, act for, or express. I'm going to say that again because this really has struck me over the years. It's something I remember in my deepest periods of grief. The guiding impetus is intention. Sometimes she'll use the word motivation. And what she's saying is, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. What matters is your motivation. Rather than weighing our chances and proceeding only when we feel hopeful, we focus on that intention and let it be our guide. Active hope identifies the outcomes we hope for and then playing a role in moving toward them. It's never waiting to be sure of success. We don't limit our choices due to the outcomes. We focus on what we truly, deeply long for, and then take determined steps in that direction. For when we are practicing active hope, we choose to draw out our best responses so that we may surprise ourselves by what we bring forth. We are larger, stronger, deeper, and more creative than we are accustomed to believing. It is time to reclaim this. When our survival response is engaged, a switch turns on. Let me close with this practice Joanna recommends when we find ourselves a bit like a deer in the headlights. And we in this country have had that feeling many times in the last 4 years, and we will have it many times in the years coming. Rather than let a new statistic or reality come at us like a tsunami, try this. Step into gratitude by focusing on your breath and taking a moment to give thanks for whatever may be sustaining you in that moment. You feel the air entering your lungs. Give thanks for oxygen. Thanks for your lungs, for all that brings you life. Then ask yourself the question, to whom am I grateful? And this moves your attention beyond yourself to those who support you. This moment of gratitude grounds us, strengthens our capacity to look at rather than turn away from disturbing information. We are just one part of a much larger story, a continuing stream of life on Earth that has flowed for 4.5 million years and has survived 5 mass extinctions. When we sink into this deeper, stronger flow and see ourselves as part of it, it widens our vision and brings us to an awareness of resources that available to you from the very channels of connectedness that are the same for the pain, for the world. And with that also comes the strength of the world, the courage of the world, the renewed determination and help of allies. With this shifting consciousness or perception, we can let go of the need to plan every step, instead trusting our intention and the emerging sequence of events that springs from that. We focus on finding and playing our part and offering our own contribution. So, take a deep breath. There was a lot of material in there, but I believe that is the wisdom piece that Joanna has given the world as one of the tools of the Shambhala warrior. I think we're all born with the compassion. So that sometimes is its own experience in our hearts. But she brings big wisdom to what do we do. And over, she has talked about that it is an honor to be alive at this time. Now, sometimes in my own head, I wrestle with her on that, you know, and I will continue to wrestle with her on that. But there is that sweetness of be the blessing that is present and has probably brought many of you here today to listen to today's webinar. And with that, I turn it over to Gail.
Thank you. The important part of the message from Joanna Macy is what Penny called, and they call the echo psychology and family systems. And I think she calls us to be more human, to be more ourselves than we have been, when I was raised to be successful. I was raised to expect to have enough material goods that life was easy for me. And that would tell me that I had really been a successful human. I mean, there was nobody to counter that article, at least not in Southern Indiana when I was growing up. Nobody countered that idea that Western civilization was not the best way to live on Earth. And so just lately, and I think Michael Dowd, for many things I disagree with him, he did shake me loose on that. And Joanna particularly is interested in pain, which we're going to see something soon about that. And then, and she talks in her video about why we don't want pain, because it's a little bother, it kind of gets in the way of our happiness, our what we think is the best part of life, and yet it is a human experience. It's a powerful experience, and it propels us into new ideas and new decisions and new connections. It propels us into deep compassion. It propels us into finding out what we care about, right? If it hurts, it matters. And about what is wrong, what is going wrong, because it doesn't feel right, it hurts. And so without pain and a few of her sisters, our lives are pallid. They're pallid. And she is calling us, as most likely we are going to need to be, more and more familiar with how to hold pain, how to feel pain, and then how to direct it in these times that are coming up for us. So Bob, would you show that Joanna Macy on pain video for us?
There's a colossal anguish, and it's not an individual matter, but we as a planet people are sick in our soul. We have pathologized pain. We have made it a wrong thing. We have made it like a mistake, rather than acknowledging that we need pain to alert us for what needs attention. And we have been treating it as some kind of enemy to our cheerfulness. I began in this as I was exploring how personally to befriend this pain, because I knew it was speaking some truth, as is indeed in Buddhism the first noble truth. The first noble truth that the Lord Buddha taught is dukkha, suffering. There is suffering. And if you want to get anywhere, honey, if you want to grow up, if you want to open to life, if you want to be enlightened, however you describe the state you're after, then you have to face that and see there is suffering. And there were lines from my childhood in the church, the Christian church, blessed are they that mourn. And that would come up in sound. And so what happens for people as they get real about their true feelings, when they tell the truth about what they see and feel and know is happening to our world, something so beautiful and so freeing happens. It's a jewel. It's like something Tiffany would like to recreate. Oh, so lovely. Like us. I mean, like us, just like dew on the grass. It's like that poem of Mary Oliver where she says, you tell me your despair and I'll tell you mine. And this allows the world to become more vivid, seeing the wild geese, seeing this incredible planet that we're in with all the life that's around us. Because we had the courage, the strength to speak of our despair. But precisely because we speak it, we don't stay there. Because that despair is the covering of our love for our world, and we crack it open by speaking it so the love can act. So the key is in not being afraid of our pain for the world, not being afraid of the world's suffering. And if you're not afraid of it, then nothing can stop you.
There we go. If you're not afraid of it, then nothing can stop you. Sounds like my mindfulness meditation teacher a number of years ago. Be aware of it, note it, let it go, and proceed. Penny was reminding Gail me a little earlier that in Joanna's work, the antidote to that pain, because we all do face pain in our lives in various forms, the antidote to pain is, in fact, community. We see that reflected today. There's a community of 81 of us on this call today, here because we want to know more about ways of moving forward, ways of responding ourselves in our own worlds. Early in one of the chapters in this book, Joanna and Chris tell the story of the movie we might remember of a few years back named Avatar. This pristine, glorious, alive, joyful world that a corporation was moving in to exploit. And Jake Sully was a good corporate man. And boy, did this strike close to home. I spent way too many years of my career as a good corporate guy. And when a dear friend tried to awaken me to some of the impacts of that, of the corporate world, it took a long time. Resistance was deep and strong. But as Jake spent time on Avatar and began to know the people, began to know their world, began to understand their culture and who they are, he transforms over the course of the story and became a part of that community that valued it and wanted to value the planet and all that they enjoyed and loved about it, all the gifts that it gave them. And he became a staunch defender of this magical world, of this wonderful world. And so Joanna and Chris proceed to tell us, to highlight for us that we might see similar transformations in ourselves, in others, through the process of what they refer to as widening the sense of self. Too often my pain is because I'm concerned about me and my own physical pain and with those that I love and care for in my immediate circle. And if we are able to broaden those broaden the lens through which we look, that can transform. They relate another story of a friend, Tom, who at the age of 30 was like a lot of typical young folks, working on his career and focused on his immediate needs and his immediate work until he and his wife had a baby. And I'm sure we have many parents and grandparents with us today who know that a baby opens new vistas and new worlds. And he began to look beyond his own immediate frame and realized that he needed to be thinking in terms of a broader dimension. what indigenous folks in North America often refer to as the next 7 generations, planning for the next 7 generations. It transforms the way in which we look and the way in which we respond to the world. And they talk to us about our identity. Pardon me while I try to multitask here. And they identify a number of layers in which we might identify. And they point to the fact that we care about those things that they refer to groups that we feel at home in. That might be our family, our neighbors, a faith community, etc. I'm blessed to be part of a faith community here in Toronto. Goes by the name of Ruah, R-U-A-H, which some of you might recognize as having biblical roots and can be interpreted as the breath of God. And that has formed a foundation for my own spiritual life for over 20 years now. Then there's also the wider community around us. We live in a neighborhood, we live in a city or a state that we care for and know in many ways, and that has different level of concerns and practices. We can talk about the global community of humanity, talk about all 7.5 billion or more of us on the planet. And more of us are opening ourselves to the Earth community of life, recognizing that we have a responsibility and to take part in and support and nurture that web of life. Another point that she makes is that we are not static in this, is that we don't have a single story. We're not locked in time, although sometimes some of us sound that way. But in fact, we are constantly restorying ourselves or being restoried by our life and our experiences. Arnie Ness referred to a term, the term that he utilized. Arnie Ness is the fellow that developed the concept of Gaia, the planet as being a living, breathing entity. And he liked the term the ecological self. And we inhabit our ecological self, he said, when our self-interest includes the rest of the natural world. Another person that some of us may know, John Seed, is an Australian who has worked for years to save the rainforest. And he takes pains to point out that he is not saving the rainforest. He says, I am part of the rainforest protecting itself. He identifies that much with that environment, that ecosystem, that part of the planet. We also are learning that evolution, which is what has led to us being inhabiting this gorgeous home of ours, is being redefined. That we've been taught often to think of it as a struggle and as conflict and as survival of the fittest. But in fact, the more we study, the more we learn that cooperation is often a vital element of the process of evolution. Going back to when single cells that were the only things that existed for time started to merge and create multi-celled organisms. And as those multi-celled organisms increased in complexity, they developed organs and became much more complex life forms. Some of those life forms create social entities, become social organisms. We think of the ants and the bees that work together to support each other and to have a living environment. And as humans, probably one of the most complex organisms on the planet, we can take that to a different level, because while we still can make our individual choices, we also are beginning to recognize more broadly that we are part of a much broader system. Buddhism refers to bodhicitta, which moves our focus from our personal well-being to that of the collective. And to take it to the world of popular culture, Star Trek talks about the prime directive and how we might refer to our prime directive or our central organizing priority is becoming the well-being of all life. So in terms of the struggle of our creating community and being part of community is that our culture has often supported our and often enforced our being lonely and our being locked up into our own personal world. She tells a story of, relates a story of a friend who talked about growing up in an apartment building for 22 years and never did learn the first names of the children across the hall. How impersonal the hallways become and the elevators taking up to our own little chambers. So the more we can broaden our sense of community and engage in community, we can begin to act with others towards shared goals. She quotes an example of from Harry Potter, how the three heroes begin to, and their stories grow out of their shared response to the grave danger that they recognized in their own world. That kind of thing can work for all of us as we begin to act with others towards our shared goals. And as we know, our current world focuses on short-term goals, much to the distress of many of us. And the section headings, and one of the chapters in her book reflect this so beautifully without going into them in detail, just to read the headings. Short-term benefits outweigh long-term goals. We don't see disasters coming our way. And we export problems to the future. We can all relate stories about each of those phenomena happening. So how do we begin to make a difference? By engaging various communities that call to us, several levels of which we can work. Penny referred to various kinds of work that can be done, holding the fort, maintaining against further losses, changing entire systems, engaging others. And we know that when we balance this against the messages that we also hear, the Michael Dowds of the world and others who tell us we're very far down a path of facing dire consequences. So do we have time? And speaking of time, I'm very conscious of my own, and because we want to respect the time of everybody on the call here, I will simply say this. As Joanna said in something we heard earlier, we don't know exactly how things are going to unfold. We don't know if the doom and gloom is going to be as dire as some predict, or if something entirely unexpected and unknown today is going to intervene and help reduce the impacts. But the point that I'm coming to personally is, regardless of how dire it may be, there will be some of us left. There will be some form of our civilization carrying on. There will be work to be done to come out from under whatever dire expectations might unfold. And so in that sense, I see our work as preparing for the way we move forward in that new world. How will we be ready to take humanity forward in a kinder, gentler, more fulsome worldview manner than we are afraid of today? And with that, I thank you. And I will turn it back to Gail.
Thank you. Have you ever had, you're about to have a car accident and you see the bumper of the car in front of you and you should be hitting it just about now, but instead it goes so slowly. You have time to think and to feel what it's suddenly time has changed. I'm sure we've all had, I hope we all have had something. And that's one thing I put my hope in, is that time can be different than the way we feel it now. So filled up with lots of little things that go so fast. And it can go slowly if we stop and notice and be true to ourselves and our environment. So I'm taking this last part here, which is about the great turning, and I'm adding some of my own thoughts in as well that have come really from the Deep Time Network leadership program that I took. I sent to you all an invitation to join this coming year. But what is happening in the great turning? I think that we have many situations, like Penny started to say, where things are changing. There is an edible blades for windmills now. The wind thing, get that for the energy, so that they can biodegrade and become part of our food chain. So people are doing fantastic things. New ways of living on Earth. Some of it is to maintain business as usual, and we need to know that business as usual will not work. That cannot continue to work. If nothing else, in the human spirit that Bob was talking about doesn't have a chance to flourish in the company of others, because we're all kept in that little apartment where you don't know the names of kids across the street. So business needs to change a little bit. I saw an article on my phone today about quiet quitting, the threat to our way of life, according to Ariana Huffington. And I say, yes, that's a good thing. It's a threat to our way of life because people don't want to work for the man anymore, right? They're saying something about what it's like to live your life at a desk in a cubby with a shovel. They're saying, I'm sorry, whatever's going to mean to me, I am not going to live that way. And I think this is part of the great turning. This is a very big message of something that is happening. There is a Gaia theory that, thank you, Bob mentioned too, which is the Earth itself kind of self-regulates as much as it can. There was a lot of heat that was coming in, of course, because of the CO2 that the ocean took far down into the ocean. So it could save us from having save the Earth from having higher heat than it could stand. So there is some kind of self-regulating on that Earth, but we are a part of that Earth. So we must do the self-regulating too. We must step up and in our pain and in our courage and compassion and all the invisibles, the thing you can't see, the thing you can't count, those feelings that you can feel if you go into a room. You can feel everybody's sad here or everybody's happy, and you don't have to look at the body language if there is any. You can just feel it. That's what I'm talking about, the invisibles. And not only that invisible thread can go far. How many times have you thought about somebody and all of a sudden, half a world away, they call you up on the phone? I thought of somebody once and she turned around and came across the corner, just like that. So there are some other energies afoot that make a difference in our lives that we can connect to, and therefore connect to each other. And my teacher on this is the Deep Time Network. I have actually been interested in, my 7th grade science project was the solar system, making a model of the solar system. But also in 1995, in the middle, I became very much interested in quantum theory and particles and string theories and what everything is telling about how it works underneath the surface, because I'm a mystic. And Sarbmeet, who taught our quantum class says that the relationship between the scientist and the mystic is very close, because you're both trying to find out what's going on, underneath the surface. What are the paths? Where's the power? And of course, as much as we spend time looking at the huge solar systems and all the stars and everything, what the universe is made out of is these tiny little particles. And not only do these tiny little particles that move around, they not only that, but these particles are blessed at the beginning with many possibilities of what they can be. But when Niels Bohr and a few other scientists were first studying these particles, they couldn't come down with a definitive result from their studies, because each particle wanted to please the person that was making the study. So they would do what they wanted them to do. This can go on. This is my hope. My big hope is we can touch that and have touched that and sent our sense of what we would like to have happen, and it changes. Okay, I'm a minister, so prayer, but you can call it something else if you want to. Prayer, let's just take Lynn McTaggart's work on intentionality. Gets groups of 8 people together and they make intentions about things that can happen in the world, and they happen. It is much more malleable than we fear. And it is definitely not Newtonian, where everything is cause and effect. We're going down the tubes. It's not. There's much room, but it's going to have to be the kind of the heart and compassion, these powerful energies that humans have. Love, they're powerful energies. We have those to open up as much as we can and allow them to come out and infect our environments, our communities, our people around us, so that we can begin to create a community that's vibrant and alive and the best that human is. There was a story that Joanna talked about in her book, and that was about security and fear. And there were when a house is on fire, the people who die are not the people who run out the door, but the people who stay and go through their belongings to see what it is they want to take with them. And they did some other studies on this. And one was they put 3 people at a table in a group of, a room of card tables, maybe 5, 6 tables, 3 people each, and they're supposed to fill out a form. So they sit down and start filling out the form, and they start pumping what looks like smoke from a fire into the vents. And a few people leave. Most people look around, see if anybody else is moving. And if nobody else is moving, they say, oh, it must be okay. So they let the other people and the group decide for them, and they stay. And they said at one point that you could hardly see in the room, and they're still there trying to fill out their form. So we naturally can go that way as well, and we don't want to do that. We need to step up. And that's one thing Joanna talks about, is that if you have active hope, you want to step up. You want to see what pains you, see what inspires you, see who you are in the company of others, and then decide on a step. But let your emotions and your spirituality be part of those steps. Otherwise, I'm sorry, they don't go, they just stop when the step is over. So if you want something to really move forward, then allow those emotions and your positivity, your positive intention for the greater good to come to all. Let that just roar out of you, and then take your first step and take your next step. And there you'll be with others, and who knows where we'll end up. But I do believe we have not finished with everything that we can be. We can be more and be together. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gail. So we have 15 minutes remaining, and perhaps what we could do now is open it up to comments or reflections on what's been said, or something that resonated that you want to add to. We have about 5 or 10 minutes for that if there's interest. So using Bob's suggestion of the hand raise, if anyone would like to comment or add to what's already been said, please share your thoughts with us.
While you're thinking about your big question, would you consider sharing where you see the great turning happening, where you see positive things, changes being made, a re-altering of power, and a re-altering of foods and life-sustaining properties? Yes.
Yes, Carol.
Thank you to each one of you. One of the great gifts of this time together has been the depths from which each of you have shared. So I would say that the energies, the visions, the beliefs, the experiences, the wisdom, the compassion that each one of you have brought and shared from such a deep place. I think that's been transformative in this community's conversation about how to respond to the postum presentation over the last 2 months. And I'd also like to thank you for the bringing together of the deep time cosmology, the evolutionary spirituality that you brought in, Gail, and for that coming together with the classical religions of Buddhism and so on, and creation spirituality tradition, and for that concluding thought that there are other energies at work. Thank you so much. Very helpful for me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Elizabeth.
There, I think, oh, I'm trying to get there. Elizabeth Sully seems.
Yes, I'm so grateful for the well-prepared presentations today. It was very exciting. I also am hoping that we can do far more with regenerative farming, because I think there's so much about the glyphosates that have so destroyed so much of our earth and probably our own human well-being in terms of all the diseases that seem to be coming up, and how the glyphosates may be found out to be the source of a lot of the destruction that's happening in our bodies. I heard the other day about one saying that if we stopped eating meat and planted trees, we could turn the whole thing around, which made me have to reconsider my own work on this, because I keep thinking I need to put my being where my mouth is, and I'm so feeling desperate about the climate emergency, and yet still finding I was eating some meat. So it's been kind of a flip in a couple of days of saying I got to do something about this and either go vegan or at least vegetarian. So thank you. Grateful.
Oh, Elizabeth, that's such a wonderful example of this is an evolutionary process, that our choices that we make today will change based on what we learn tomorrow. And that is active hope. Exactly what you laid out is changing behavior because of something new that is moving within you. And so if you feel moved, I would highly recommend Joanna's book for you, because I think it'll keep stimulating that. And the one thing I want to comment on is she offers many ways to even do this with a friend. Read her book, talk back and forth using the exercises she provides, because you will go deeper and deeper, and you will be employing or engaging that active hope related to intention. Thank you.
I have one to tell you. Oh, sorry, Anna, is mine so short? The city of Boston, everybody is composting. Everybody, they have a third barrel for compost. That's a step ahead. Annie, sorry.
Yeah, I want to say that I feel very hopeful about watching so many people realizing that I've lived kind of in a trance or unconsciously, that I just sort of going along, business as usual. And as wise elders, a lot of people I hang around with are older, saying, we really can change. I don't have to eat meat, even though I like to. I don't have to do everything I want. And then saying, I feel so much better. I feel so much better when I'm involved in doing something for others. And just lastly, I happen to be Christian, and I feel that we're made to love, and we really feel the best and the happiest when we're self-forgetting. So it's an exciting time for me, as well as a scary time. It's both.
Thank you. Thank you. You are alive. That's aliveness. Yes.
The question's been asked, which book am I referring to? And the book I'm referring to is a book that came out probably 20 years ago, maybe, but, or maybe 10, Active Hope, and it's the revised edition. The Active Hope that was written earlier did not have us placed where we are today with climate change and the major challenges we're facing. So, and an interesting thing she does in one segment is to talk about what we've learned from COVID. And I think, we all know in each of our lives, COVID impacted us. Well, we've changed as a world society, and there are lessons to be learned from that. Natalie, you're muted.
I just wanted that question about something that gives you hope, or you hope that it gives you hope. Is that I know that tonight our president's going to try to address the nation on what he calls to look at the soul of our nation, that it's in deep, deep trouble. And I think that it's got to take a lot of courage. Now, I don't know all that he's going to say, and I'm sure there's something political in here, but we've got to start hearing it. We've got to hear that when we're hearing it. And those of us that already are aware of it, when we hear it, know it more. But we're also aware there's a lot of people who haven't yet even begun to really believe what dire situation our earth is in that we do have to change. So I just bring him in and bring the prayers of people who are trying. And right now, maybe the political scene isn't the best place, but it's one of those places that we are kind of balancing before we come up with something else. So I just thought I would just share that, and it's what's going on as I was listening today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Annie?
Just a quote from Emily Dickinson. She says, "Hope inspires the good to reveal itself."
Yeah. And then I link back to, there's a distinction that Joanna makes between hopefulness and active hope. And active hope puts us in the middle of that. Yeah. Thank you, Annie. Thank you. Well, one more comment or thought before we close?
I think Carol's up again.
Okay, Carol.
Mine's a question. Gail, it's for you, I think. One of the things that gave me hope in all of this was your reference to the monks dancing with their hands, using ritual hand movements to dance with compassion and wisdom.
Mhm.
Do you have anything more to say about the name of that ritual?
Oh, I'm so honored, but that was actually Joanna Macy, not me, who said that. She was talking about the Buddhists, and they have one was the wisdom and the other was the compassion, right? So
Yes.
they work the wisdom and compassion, so I got my cat on my lap, together, and they danced them together while they were meditating.
Well, that's active hope. I'm going to do that at least 10 times tonight and tomorrow. Thank you.
And you would look that up under mudras, and there may be a lot already out there to be more specific about it.
Thank you, Penny.
Well, we thought we'd close with the song that began. And this time, and when the day comes that Zoom allows this magic to happen, that we can all sing together, what a marvelous time that will be. But we'll play the video and invite you to sing along or hum along. Actually, some of you may know that humming is really good for the polyvagal nerve. And that's one of those calming and empowering things to know about. It's a nerve for our time. So if you're looking for things to look up, polyvagal nerve is really a good one to know about today. And it has to do with exhalation that's longer than the inhalation. You activate it. And again, we've been a shallow breathing culture for a long, long time, and it's time to go deeper. And this is yet another way to do so. So Bob, can you bring up, is this Mamou's this time?
It's the same recording, but we're going to put the lyrics on the screen so that you can sing along with us. You'll want to keep yourself muted still, but because Zoom just does not treat multiple voices kindly, but you get to sing along as we're listening to the song.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vines. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Thank you all for being part of today. And next month is a slightly unsettled, but we'll be back again with something amazing. And please let Gail or one of us know if you have further comments or suggestions for what you'd like to see going forward. Thank you all. Gail, Bob, you want to say anything before we sign off?
Just thanks for being a part of today.
Bob,
Thank you.
please send out the link to that recording, Bob. That was beautiful.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Thank you all.
Maybe put it in the chat.
Oh, I can do that.
Just look up the name, We Shall Be Known, which is the song. We Shall Be Known, and you'll get about 5 options.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay.
YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here's the particular one we were listening to right now.
Oh, my pen is on my iPad. Yes, writing letters.
Okay.
Anyway.
See you next month.
See you next month.
You will.
You will.
Thank you.